All right. Hey guys. Welcome back to another episode of Sports Insomniacs. So, how you doing, Franklin?
I'm doing great. How are you, Laya?
Uh Doing all right, man. Doing all right. It's been a week since school ended. So kind of nice just to chill for at least this week before, summer starts to ramp up and, we all got things to do.
For
But
sure.
um I will say, something that's also definitely ramping up is we're getting gearing straight ahead into these NBA playoffs, man.
Yeah,
It's
for
fast
sure.
approaching. It's like, we talk about it, and it feels like the NBA season is so long that it kind of creeps up on you sometimes. You know that there's like single digit games remaining for all these teams, right? So
Yeah.
it's just what you see is what you see. And I guess I got to start what you see, what you see. And right now, the Lakers are in the playing games. Your favorite team. Tell me. So that Portland LA game was like so important because that was
Yes.
a tiebreaker. I feel like whoever won that kind of set to not be in the play-in. We'll see how the schedule. We'll see how they do down the stretch. Uh, I think they're clobbering San Antonio as we speak, or they clobbered. I don't know. Uh, was it Portland? So yeah, tell me what are your thoughts? Is LA going to be in the is the are the Lakers going to be in the playing game, and are they in trouble? Yeah,
I think they are. That's come, from a fan that I've always loved the Lakers, and I've tried to stay optimistic, but in this case, it doesn't look very good. I'm just like thinking right now, like for example, the first and foremost for the Lakers is the health of LeBron James. I mean, like you've seen what Anthony Davis has done on the floor, and I would say I'll give him some credit in that game against Portland. He had like a back spasm, a little bit of ankle sprain, played pretty damn good against Portland. So that was a very tough loss, but at least I think they showed a little bit of effort, and I was like, okay, that's like a little bit better, but his efforts and his attempt to carry the team are limited in terms of just like translating to victories. So like you definitely need LeBron to really like carry this team to a higher level. Now the problem is LeBron has been injured. He sat out both of these games, which are both losses. Um, Looking at the schedule, right? They have 5 games left. They play on Sunday against Phoenix. I don't think LeBron's coming back for that game. And even if LeBron comes back, I'm pretty sure they lose that game. They play Tuesday versus the Knicks. If LeBron doesn't come back, I think they're losing that game too because the Knicks have been really good. I you just can't really say anything. And
yeah.
Tibbs, he's definitely going to like get the most out of these guys. So I think a LeBron-less Lakers team will lose to the Knicks. I give them the Houston matchup because Houston's just tanking. There's no reason for him to play. And then the last two, Indiana on next Saturday. That one's very tough. Indiana played a really tough game today against the Wizards, who are hot as hell. Um,
Yeah, we got to talk
Again,
about that.
without
Yeah,
without LeBron, can be a loss again. So that one's more of a toss up, I would say, but it can be a loss. And then I give them the win against New Orleans just because Zion's out for the season. That's the only reason why. But other than that, I mean, like, so what are we looking at? A 2-3 record closing off the season. That's just like brutal at the point right now. And the Lakers they have enough of a cushion. They're 2.5 games up on the Warriors that that's probably fine. They'll probably hold on to 7 seed, but going into this entire late season kind of picture, they were hoping to stay out of the play-in. Like that was the bottom line, and they failed. I mean, that's it's not going to. I don't see any scenario they're going to come back into the 6th seed because Portland has tiebreaker over them, and they're playing a lot better than them. So I just at this point, it's a tough time to be a Lakers fan. I'll say that much.
yeah. Let me switch this up. I just realized because yeah, I just realized I got to switch that up real quick. But yeah, I know. But to your point, I agree. That is actually, yeah. That's as a Celtics fan who likes to see the Lakers kind of in disarray. It's helpful. Although we're having our share of troubles as well, losing to
Yeah.
freaking the Bulls. Oh my god! But so, but yeah, exactly. I think it's kind of so. Let me collect my thoughts. So Ken Pomeroy, he does college basketball analytics. He's a god at that. You know, off-cited, off-quoted, all that. But he also there's this link on his site to dunks and threes, which is like NBA analysis, like similar to his what's it called? College basketball analysis, except it's like more impressive because there's so many more teams in college basketball.
Right.
But what the Lakers, their offensive rating is absolutely atrocious. It's as bad as the Nets are defensively. And we talk about how, we joke about how bad the Nets are defensively, but if they don't have LeBron, right? And sure, they're great defensively. They're number one defensively, right? Because the Lakers just the way 80 intruder, all that, they figure it out. But if they can't get anything offensively going without LeBron, and LeBron has always been saying like, I'm not going to be at 100% ever again, all this stuff, like it is concerning. And the Warriors, the way they're playing right now, like, geez, you know, Curry's. It's of course it's April's over, but it's still Curry, man. You still got to look out, and
Exactly.
that's kind of it's for some casuals, are kind of cynical about the NBA. They've been riding off that, oh well, the Lakers are just going to win the championship. It's Lakers Nets, like, oh, let's just pencil it in right now, and they're going to be in the play-in game. It looks like. So, wow, it's just this season. It's anything can happen, and anything kind of has happened. I mean, uh, but I think you said it all. I think about the Lakers as a fan, I mean, you're more in tune with it. And we'll see what happens when LeBron is back. If
Yeah.
LeBron's able to get back in a place. I mean, it's LeBron James. He's the best player in the world. Maybe it is what it is. So that is one storyline that's going on.
Right.
But I mean, with that in mind, so like you said, Portland is playing better now. Portland is still not. I mean, they're also like not great defense. Like, they're not great defensively at all. Like, they're
Oh,
even worse than the Nets. I mean, it feels like outside of Lillard and McCollum, and I guess Powell now just trying to carry them, I don't even think they have much of a shot either. But the fact that the Lakers are like they just lost to Portland like that, and it's kind of concerning. I feel like if you're a Lakers fan.
yeah. I think uh, really just like managing like expectations. That's the only thing I would say. Portland, as great as a team they are, as great as their team history has been, they have that one championship. I think for Portland fans, they really do expect and they hope for them to do well in the playoffs, maybe get to conference final, stuff like that. That's like basically, as person, no offense to them, that would be basically their expectation. But as a Los Angeles Lakers fan, and first of all, as the defending champions, you have two of the five best players in the NBA.
Yeah.
Have like probably one of the most storied franchises, like apart from the Celtics, basically tied for championships right now at 17. I mean, you're looking to win the championship every year, and they were considered the favorite the entire year, basically, if healthy. Everyone was saying they were even like a
Even
good
with the Nets, yeah.
exactly going toe to toe with the Nets with like three freaking amazing players. So
Yeah.
that's why, as a Lakers fan, it's so crushing to see them, in the playing game, because it just really dims our hopes of like getting back to the championship. It's not easy to win a championship. That's bottom line, and you're seeing that come out, play out in front of our eyes. But it's just especially brutal this season, just watching what's happening. So
Yeah. I think you hit it on. Like, I just remember the season right before the season was about to start. You're thinking about by far who the favorites were to like to win the championship. It was just the Lakers, and you're just thinking about last year's team and how they were constructed and how acquiring Schroeder, like they got better supposedly
Yeah.
with Harrell. With Harrell and Schroeder, like they were supposed to get better, and then they were talking about Taylor Horton Tucker, like this new wonderkind, guy, is about our age, man. Jesus, I mean, all these young players are about our age, but it's what am I saying? Yeah, so you start out from that standpoint, and it just sucks that here we are now, and I think that was all. I mean, of course, those were all predicated on the fact that LeBron would be healthy and AD would be healthy, but then look at where we're at, and it kind of sucks that it was kind of just I guess a freak injury. It was just jumping up for a ball and just landed sideways on his ankle. Now LeBron's out, and it's wide open. And I guess as a Celtics fan and as an NBA fan, I like to see it that LeBron's not just going to be this dominant guy in the playoffs. But, on the flip side, I mean, of course, it does suck that we won't see the team that's supposed to be the best team when all their stars are healthy. Well, with the Nets, it's kind of whichever. I would say Lakers would be better in that case, but still.
Close one. Yeah, for sure.
So that also means that the chance that the Clippers Lakers first round hopes is kind of dead, which sucks. All that drama we were building up for, it's kind of dead. So oof there.
I'd say, yeah, I think it's dead. At this point, I think if you were looking for Clippers Lakers, it'd be the Western Conference semifinals, the second round. Look, the Lakers, though, in the play-in tournament, it's very difficult. Like, if I ran through something hypothetical, like real quick. So you have the 7th place seed, which the Lakers are right now. They played the 8th seed.
They'll be
Golden State Warriors, right? So it's a one-game matchup. One-game matchup against Steph Curry. That's no joke right there. So let's say Steph goes off and they win. So now you get to play again the winner of the 9-10 game. So right now the 9 and 10 teams are Memphis and San Antonio. I don't think any of them could probably beat the Lakers, but in a one-game scenario, again, like it's anyone's game, but I feel like the Lakers would probably advance. The only problem is at that point they'd be playing Utah at Utah, round 1,
with probably a healthy Donovan Mitchell, right?
Exactly, with Donovan back, because Donovan's just been resting the entire time. He's been out for precautionary purposes. He's not actually still totally so injured he can't play. So there you go, right there, right off the bat, you got the Jazz, which is that's just a brutal matchup. Second round, winner of Denver Nuggets, Dallas Mavericks, and third round, probably the Clippers. So yeah, that's brutal. But I mean, that's the reason why if you're in the play-in, it diminishes your chances of winning championships so much. It's just such a harder path to get through. So.
Yeah, exactly. And if LeBron's coming off of this injury, he's supposed to be coming off of this injury, and he's got to even play even more games than he usually plays, which is also insane. Thinking about how LeBron plays an extra half of so many games every year because he goes so far in the playoffs. Think about how old he is. It's kind of making that admission like that. That he's not going to get to 100%. It's kind of interesting because, LeBron James, he's kind of the cyborg. We kind of see him as the Tom Brady of, the way Tom Brady popped off the same time that kind of LeBron James pops off, right? It's that same, those two players it's like the same trajectory, like they're parallel compared to each other, always in different sports. And then Tom Brady would never say something like this, right? Tom Brady would always be like, oh, he's 100% healthy and he would do this. But the fact that LeBron's making this admission is kind of like, oh my God, is this actually so? Yeah, it's definitely concerning.
It is. Yeah.
Well, I do think though, if the Lakers play the Warriors, I mean the Warriors can win that, but I think the Lakers would beat the Warriors, like more likely than not.
I just don't know how well, how much LeBron James will be, during this. So like you need LeBron, obviously, but I feel like in terms of like, what he's been talking about and, like we know about high ankle sprains in the NFL and stuff like that. That
Yeah,
thing's like a long-term bothering thing. You definitely need like months off from it just to like, fully recover for next season, basically. So again, he's not going to be like totally, 100%. So if he like suffers some kind of setback or something like while playing, that becomes like a huge issue for the Lakers again, because, they're just integrating him back in and then suddenly he's out of the lineup again. So those are all scenarios that could happen. So, it's just, concerning. So.
yeah. I get that. I definitely get that. And I don't really have any more to say about the Lakers. We'll definitely, again, right before the playoffs start, we'll definitely record something, talking about these matchups and a recap for the season. But I think that's all I got to say, man.
Same. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But so I guess to continue on, since we're in the West, Denver, man, the fact that they're doing this on the streak, they're maintaining this steady pace. Like Michael Porter Jr. has been, stepping up, and it's wild. It's absolutely wild that they're actually doing this without Jamal Murray. I feel like we've said this for a couple of weeks now, but it's still going. They're 8-2 in their last, they're how much? What are they in the last games? Let me see.
They're 6-2 now, but they were playing pretty good teams. Still, I mean, they didn't lose by a lot. They lost to the Nets and at the Jazz. So I mean, two best
Yeah,
for the best team. So it's all
and
good.
exactly. So I think it's clear. I think you've made it clear before to me. The Jokic is the MVP.
Yeah.
I mean, we can go in. I mean, his estimated plus minus is by far the highest. His wins above replacement is not even close. Statistically, it's like when they do a graph, you have to put like the squiggly line to say like it's that much different. His estimated wins above replacement is crazy.
Yeah.
When you look at it's an outlier when looking at like a distribution curve. Like, and these might just be stats and numbers, and we're a pro Chris Paul group, pro Chris Paul duo, but this is at Kendrick Perkins and at, these other NBA people that are saying, oh, well, yeah, sure, Jokic is the great in the stats and all that, but you can't tell the culture and whatnot. And sure, Chris Paul's done that, but so has Jokic. Like these stats aren't just like like numbers. These are like stats that show how important he is for changing how they play. And you can see it by the way he plays. Like I feel like because maybe these analysts are saying, because he's a center, and you've talked about this, and not to make your point, but there's a bias against foreigners a lot of times in the NBA and winning the MVP. And I mean, Giannis has done it just because Giannis had to have it, but in general, like people are just trying to find those second guys, and I think it's kind of clear cut after Murray got injured that he's been able to do this. Of course, there's these offensive stats. The way he's shooting, like he would shoot like a guard. His passing is amazing when you watch it. It's just wow. And I mean, I'm lost. I can get around all the stats, but I mean, you're going to hear a bunch of people say like I think it's clear cut that he's the MVP, and I'm just glad that the Nuggets could. I think it just makes me realize how great Jokic is that the Nuggets are still able to hold water. I thought they would like plummet after Murray like they got injured, and look at where they are, man.
I mean, yeah, I think you basically said everything about that. Yeah, we've been pretty clear that Jokic is the MVP in our minds for a long time. I think one of the only deals about, Chris Paul, maybe Stephen Curry as well, like being considered for MVP. One of the reasons would just be, the media wants to like come up with some interesting stories just to like, captivate the audience a little bit, get them a little bit engaged. That's why, and that's my opinion on that, because looking at like what Jokic has done this season, especially after Murray went down, um, that basically sealed it for one. And then second of all, just like in terms of how he plays, Michael Porter Jr. right now, and then Jamal Murray last season and this season. The reason why they're this good and like they've been playing so well is because Nikola Jokic is there as their center, as their passing guy, as the guy that finds them open in the corner, as the guy that people need to double team because if he goes one on one, he's going to shoot over them and just going to score. That's why that team is playing so well. That's why they're functioning so well. There was an entire podcast on the Ringer. I know Bill Simmons had this really, really in-depth one about Nikola Jokic and how good of a player he is.
Yeah,
So
him and KOC and KOC and they that whole gang. Yeah.
yeah, broke it down. Yeah, exactly. So at this point, it'd be crime not to give Jokic that MVP trophy. I think he's all about sealed it up. Even if the Nuggets, even if he sits out games at this point, or if the Nuggets like keep on losing a little bit, I think at this point he sealed it. I just don't. I just really think this season's just been amazing.
Well, I disagree from that standpoint because well, if he sat that's different. But if they start losing games and they're actually, let's say, I mean, let me look at them in the standings.
They're
I mean,
forced.
they're 4 games ahead, so sure. But if that's let's say it got really close to Dallas, right? And then somehow, because correct me if I'm wrong, but Dallas has a relatively easy schedule, right?
Let's take a look at Dallas. Dallas has
A little detour.
their schedule. Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's not that bad. Cleveland, Memphis, New Orleans, Toronto, Minnesota.
Yeah,
Probably
so
go
easy.
5-0, 4-1, something like that. Yeah.
So if they start losing games, which I don't think they will, and they're in the 5th spot, it's hard to give this man the MVP when they're not even going to have home field advantage. I think there's something to be said about that. Like Westbrook, sure. Like, I mean, Jokic is having a historic season, just like the way Westbrook is. But like, Westbrook was like averaging a triple double, but it was more triple than not in every. It was crazy that season,
Yeah.
and I mean, I wasn't too much of a fan of giving it to him, but after some thought, I'm okay with it. Uh, in hindsight, uh, I guess what I mean by in hindsight, it's like I see how it's just amazing how he's able to average triple doubles. So I'm like, sure, why not? But I think there's maybe it's kind of hard to give Jokic that if they're going to not have home field advantage, not like overall, but like in at least one series. Because at that point, I feel like you would give it to this is the thing against Curry. Like I wouldn't give it to Curry because I mean, yes, he's in that case either because yes, he was historic for that month, but I mean, it's not like their team is anything outstanding. And we kind of have an idea of what the MVP is in the NBA, right? It's not, if it's really the most valuable player, then it would be either LeBron every year or Steph Curry every year, right? If it was actually the most valuable player. But it's a little different than that. I mean, we kind of figured that out. So I think it would hurt, but I don't think that's going to happen. So I think that's kind of moot. But
Yeah. I guess like that's probably correct. If they drop to the 5, that might be a little bit tough for them to justify. Again, it's like Chris Paul probably be the closest one that would probably contend for that. But yeah,
I would say Embiid, but I know people are like he's missed games, but my God,
Embiid's missed a lot of games. Yeah, that one's a little bit I guess it's up to the voters, but it is interesting. I would probably, I mean, personally, I'd probably give it to Chris Paul, but again, that might be different. But again, Denver's remaining schedule. We got Charlotte, at Minnesota, at Detroit, at Portland. So even if 2-2 split, I'd say, because Minnesota, Detroit, they're both tanking. So there's no reason for them to win those games. Charlotte, Portland, chalk it up as both losses. 2-2, they're still going to hold on to the 4 seed. So basically that's a snub.
Yeah. I think I was just was me kind of nitpicking at your point, I guess. But yeah.
Right. No, that's all good. It's all good.
I agree with that part. I mean, the West in that case is kind of, it's kind of done from my point of view. I think, we talked about how Dallas is an easy schedule. Portland's kind of, I guess, and with Zion being out, that sucks. I mean, they had a shot. It was distant, it felt like, but the Pelicans had a shot, and that sucks.
Yeah, I mean, if you saw David Griffin's press conference, he was just ripping the league for he kind of ripped the league for getting Zion injured. Reason being, and I partially agree to this. I mean, in some cases a little bit overstated, but in some cases I do agree with this. Zion, he's been he's such a like a physically dominant just like player, and he's always like in the paint, trying to like do stuff around the paint, around the rim.
Yeah.
A lot of times, it feels like he doesn't get his calls that like other players would. So like fouls that other players commit on Zion.
Yeah.
It's been like he likened it somewhat to like Shaq back in the the early 2000s, when such a dominant player that like just being ripped and like handled on, like they're not going to give you all the
Shaq,
calls.
yeah.
Exactly. So that's been something that David Griffin's been like really unhappy about. That's why, like he said, like Zion having that finger fracture is like a byproduct of these officials being just like not calling all these calls that should have been called on any other player. And I partially agree with that. I feel like sometimes like these guys are being like unfairly like being put like, hey, you should be calling like the same amount of fouls on every player. It shouldn't just be like, hey, Zion's bigger than the other guys. You shouldn't be like, he should be getting less calls, because that's just dumb. I think that's a dumb theory. So, but it's also an unfortunate thing that Zion got injured at the end of the season. They were like making kind of a late push, but now that he's out for the season, it's basically done there. So,
I mean, it's just my worry with Zion. I mean, this is different. I mean, this is, of course, I was worried about how he would be refed, because I mean, he was so physical. I mean, we saw him, like he's one of those guys that like he's just on the paint. My God, he'll just find a way to finish, like just a bunch of bodies. Like he'll just fight through it. Like my goodness. And I was kind of worried at how, I mean, that plus he's kind of in a way a unicorn. How muscular and how big he is and how high he can jump. I mean, that's a different, get heading into college, of course, all those like he should lose weight debates and all that jazz. But I mean, he had, early on, like a lot of injuries. And even though this is a finger fracture, like you're saying, and it's not really related to weight and all that jazz. It's just, it sucks, man. It just sucks for this guy. Because I mean, yeah, of course, injuries just suck in general. But yeah, that's all I could say, I guess.
Definitely.
Right now. It just sucks.
I'd just say it's probably a freak injury, really. You could label it. But again, I mean, we want to see him like on the floor. He's amazing, and it sucks when he's not on the floor. So, yeah, for sure.
But the reffing, I guess this goes to a bigger point in the NBA. It's, for me, as a guy who likes college basketball more candidly, it just feels like they call so many more fouls in the NBA. Like it's so much more disjointed, it feels at times, because these players are so good at drawing fouls. Like these guards, of course, Trae Young, Luka, maybe not like James Harden and Trae, of course, but these other guards have figured it out. And you see Jason Tatum complain all the time about trying to get calls. It's, I mean, it just sucks to see it and the choppiness. But then from a different angle, I get it, right? I mean, I think Griffin's right. At times, I think Zion just you can't the way Trae Young is able to get away with so much, but then not Zion.
Yeah.
It's kind of we're in a predicament. It's a weird conundrum we're in because it feels like every time Zion is there, like people end up fouling him just because he'll just score a bucket. He'll just score no matter what. He's like so good.
Right.
It's but at the same time, it's so if you call it every foul in that point, then the viewer thinking about from a fan perspective how choppy the game would become from that angle. It's just and it just sucks, man. It just sucks because on one hand, you have to think about player safety. So many players are getting injured this year, probably because of the so many back to backs and trying to shorten this all into this allotted time frame than instead of a usual NBA schedule. And that's the injury rate supposedly hasn't gone down, but I mean these stars are getting injured. Like Jokic should get the MVP regardless. I think like when Embiid was healthy, it was still like Jokic was still like the second best or even tied for the best at that point, right? But it's kind of there's a reason the tone of this Jokic MVP debate's been more like, oh, well, it's because he's the only star left. When that's not really the case, but I get so there's a reason that tone is being taken because I mean LeBron's injured, Steph Curry was injured for a bit, Jimmy, but like we can go on and on and on and on about all these stars. So maybe they should have called more fouls to like protect that, to protect the players. So there's that angle, but then from a viewer angle, I'm like, my God, there's like so many free throws. It takes so long for a game to end. In the last few minutes, it feels like. So we're in this weird conundrum, and I think, yeah.
Absolutely.
Other than that, though, I really got nothing to say about the West. Anything you want to say?
Yeah, not too much about the West. Other than that, probably, just like we basically covered everything about the West. I'm just looking at like Houston's probably pretty much clinched the worst record in the NBA. So again, lottery is bottom three, get the same odds, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, basically seeing the fallout of no James Harden and a lot of injuries to even key players on their depleted team already, leading to the worst record in the NBA. But yeah,
I mean, I guess we can bridge this into some Brooklyn Nets talk, but bridge this into the Eastern Conference. But as someone who doesn't necessarily like James Harden, you always got to pick players not to like. So I just don't like James Harden. Just a bunch of ISO threes, it felt like, and the way he left Houston. But I think there's a reason. I mean, maybe he carried so much more and he was so much more important to Houston than we even realized. And sure, I mean, we realized at the time, but I mean, it's visceral. Like you can see this, right? He left and they're the worst team. And that's wild to think about it that way. So he was maybe the same way we're talking about the most valuable player should be talking about like when you take him out, are they the last team in the league? I mean, Jokic by estimated wins above replacement definitely fits that. So clear that argument as well. But Harden definitely won. And I think, of course, because the Nets have so much more talent, they're in a better shape than they're in a relatively better shape. But my God, like without Harden, the Nets look they look vulnerable. It's not this beast, this unconquerable beast, this Leviathan. Like it can be cut up, man. It can be cut up into pieces. He got a big man. Embiid could just, I could see the Sixers, the Bucks kind of did it with Giannis, but I could even see the Sixers like just taking him to town without Harden. I guess, give me your thoughts, man. Give me your thoughts.
I think this isn't far-fetched, really, but in terms of what we've talked about, I think on a very early pod that I suggested that Harden, though not the most talented player, I think that title goes to KD on that team. I would say he's the most important player for the Nets. I think he's the guy, again, that's, the anchor for assisting and then like kind of like running the entire system in Brooklyn, making sure that all these like, superstars, shooters and drives and like Katie, Kyrie, all those shooters on the edge, Joe Harris and company, they get their shots. That everything's facilitated well, that force, that evenly spaced, and all that. I think Harden's that guy that really is so crucial to an NBA team. And with the Brooklyn Nets, with Mike D'Antoni coming onto the bench as an assistant, like that's like, even though they're not running exactly the D'Antoni in Brooklyn, it's still like a very much like he has a large influence on a team and how like basketball works there. So Harden's naturally the guy that I think like Brooklyn definitely needs to beat someone like a Philadelphia or Milwaukee. Milwaukee's been, I mean, in my personal thing, I feel like they've been semi flying under the radar a little bit in terms of stuff.
Yes.
Um, they've been largely overlooked just because one, Giannis is not in the MVP conversation because he's
Even yeah, but he kind of should be. It's
kind of
just
should
kind of
be.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's been another year. We don't want to give it to him three times if he hasn't
Right.
done something absolutely extraordinary in this third time. But yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. He's just been consistently like amazing. So
yeah,
what can you ask for? So yeah, so I think the Bucks and the Sixers, they both got their big guys, their big stars, right? Giannis and Joel. And the Nets, are vulnerable there. They have, I think their best big guy down low is Nick Claxton. Guy's a rookie, I'm pretty sure. So like, as much as Nick Claxton can be good, playing against these like seasoned guys, like Embiid's like MVP candidate. Giannis is two-time MVP. Like these guys are like, they'll eat you up inside, like at the paint. So yeah, I think the Nets definitely need Harden to just like really like make sure the system works and like to kind of counter that in terms of just like making sure that they have their balanced attack. So yeah, that's what I think.
I mean, this is my thing with college basketball, right? I always say 3-and-D teams are the best teams because that's the best way to go on a run when you're down, right? The best way is to have good defense to where you can stop the other team from scoring. And if you're good on offense, you can score enough to catch. But the number one thing you need when you're down is to have a good defense to actually stop the hemorrhaging,
Right.
right? And I mean, they're so bad defensively, right? The Nets are just known to be that. And
Yeah.
sure, like with Steve Nash and others, like their coach and others have talked about, well, you can kind of turn it up defensively. KD can turn it defensively when you need to, and all that. But Kyrie hasn't been really defensive minded. James Harden, at times in the playoffs, he's been like defensive minded to make up for his offensive chokes. But you know, it's it's not really that great of a defensive team, and losing LaMarcus Aldridge, I think, really sucks. And so let's say you don't have a good defense, your offense has to be in that case, right? Then your offense has to just be perfect, like the three-headed monster that we were thinking we were going to get, in order to maybe get out of a deficit, right? But otherwise, right, you need a solid defense for most of the time, just to give yourself some more cushion. But otherwise, then you just need that historic offense we're supposed to get. And if you're not going to get that, then I mean, Philly's up there with the Lakers as like the best defensive team in the NBA. Drew Holiday is locking people down. I think that's what's going under. I mean, maybe I don't think it's that under radar, but I guess it's not under radar because people are talking about it. I just think we're both higher on the Bucks than even the people talking about it.
Yeah.
Because I think Drew Holiday he's locking up these elite guards like not like it's nothing, and it's unbelievable. It's like, my goodness. And of course, Giannis is doing a thing, and if Chris Middleton, of course, can pop off when you need to. He's one of the best role players he's an all-star caliber role player. I mean, a McCollum type guy. So it's the Bucks, because of how good they can be defensively, and of course how good the Sixers can be defensively. That kind of is able to mitigate in a less than 100% perfect offense. And then when you couple that with a bad defense, and you got Jokic, not my God, what is up with this? You got Embiid, I got the Joe.
There you go.
You got the Embiid right in the post, just gonna torch the Nets without Aldridge. Of course, Giannis. That game where they beat the Nets this week, right? They show you how they can do it, right?
Yeah.
They need Harden. I think they just need Harden in order. But once they have Harden, we'll see. I'm a little lower on them now, seeing how they are without Harden. I thought Harden would be more of a. I mean, you're right. He is the most important player. But I thought they would still be a good team, great team. It's just Harden makes them historic. But
Right.
it looks like maybe that's not the case. That's kind of concerning when, let's say, Donovan Mitchell comes back with the Jazz and then they come up, or let's say the Clippers figure, Kawhi Leonard's able to, be fully healthy and all of that.
Exactly.
Then it's worrying in that case, even with Harden, because I thought their ceiling was even higher than I guess it is.
What concerned me, just like last point on the Nets, I think I was watching a little bit of the Dallas Mavericks versus the Brooklyn Nets that other night. I was really, really just like confused at the end. I understand this, but the lack of defenders on that team. Luka Doncic going down the floor, on offense. Who was guarding Luka? It was Kevin Durant at the end of the game, like the entire time, like on every single play. And I'm thinking, KD is supposed to be like small forward, power forward, and Luka's, I guess you could say he's a forward, but he's basically running point. Basically, you have a forward guarding a guard the entire the last half of the game, basically. That is a problem because these superstars like KD, they want to really conserve themselves in order to perform well in offense. You have to put him on the best player on the other team, just hold up and stop the bleeding on defense. That is something that I find a little bit concerning as well. You don't want to exhaust KD on both sides of the floor, especially after he's been dealing with injuries all year long. Although he seems pretty healthy now, it's still it is something that can be a concern. And that's just something I find appalling. Just that's crazy that they're putting KD on Luka the entire second half of the game basically, and that's that was just tough. Just tough for the Nets.
That's why they need Harden, because here's the thing: KD can, because KD's good defensively. I think he doesn't do it a lot in the regular season. He is good defensively when he needs to be. It's but you're right. It does eat up a lot of he's coming off of that. He's coming off of an injury. He's always coming off of an injury, but and he needs to conserve himself on offense, right? But if you have to do that as a last resort to be decent on defense, fine, do that. But then you have to have Harden then, because if you don't have Harden, then your offense, like you said, is going to be weakened.
Right.
Based on energy reserves and all that jazz.
Exactly.
And I mean, Blake Griffin's turned out to be, wonderful surprise. Figured out how to, just did a bit where he didn't dunk for 2 years and then just decided to be like, hey, I'm still kind of back, it's still, not prime me, but functional me. It's like, Jesus.
Yeah.
So that's there, but but the point you made, I think that's a good point about with the Mavericks game. That's a good point. So anything else, I guess, that kind of caps up with the Brooklyn panic button. I guess there's just the East. We could talk about the fact that I had some false insecurity at the Celtics were just going to stay in the 6th seed, and it's turned out they're in the play-in game now, and they're a game back. And my God, this 4 through 7, this whole year, these four, the Knicks, Hawks, Heat, Celtics, Hornets. Before LaMelo and Hayward got injured, they're always like they're all clumped together, and man, this is
Yeah.
this is shaping up. I guess I got to look at this. What are the remaining schedules for these teams? I guess we're just gonna figure this out
So
live, man.
So I'll say this. I think when it comes to schedules, the good news for you is that the Celtics probably have the easiest schedule. The best thing about the Celtics, though, is the next two games, they directly play against the Miami Heat. So they control their own destiny to see who wins and gets the 6th seed. If you win against the Heat, right, that's definitely like the biggest step you can possibly take because you own tiebreaker. And you get like the overall games like up or down against like your direct opponent in the 6th seed spot. Now, after they play the Heat twice, they play Cleveland, Minnesota, and Knicks. So definitely 2 wins there because there's 2 tanking teams. They'll probably win against the Knicks, but it's a toss-up. I'd say a little bit more of that, but I'd give the Celtics probably the win there. So that's like a pretty decent schedule. Now looking at Miami's, Miami schedule, they play Boston twice again, and then they play a pretty tough schedule: Philadelphia, Milwaukee, and then they end with Detroit. So unless the Sixers and the Bucks, they aren't playing for anything, which is unlikely because they're still fighting for the 1 seed. They're going to be full power. So I feel like the Heat have a much tougher schedule down the road. But if they do well against Boston, like when they play the Celtics directly, that could be something to watch for. I think the biggest thing, though, for me, honestly, would be looking at the Atlanta Hawks. That's the one I think I'm.
They play the Wizards.
They play the Wizards twice, right? And then they played the Magic and the Rockets. But playing against the Wizards twice, if they drop both of the games, which is, I think, pretty likely at this point because the Wizards are on fire, it's like they could fall out, maybe end up as a 7th seed, and you have, both Miami and Boston inside the normal seeding outside of the play-in. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's the Knicks have a tough schedule as well. They got the Clippers. We talked about the Lakers probably losing to the Knicks, but that's still a tough game. I feel like
that's a tough game. Yeah, I agree.
The Hornets, we'll see what that is. So my gosh, it's heating up down the stretch. I definitely got to check in tomorrow on that. Man, it always boils down Celtics Heat every year, it feels like, or every other year. My gosh.
It's a good rivalry. Right?
It's one of those rivalries, man. It's one of those.
For sure.
We still haven't figured out – I don't know if we figure out a way to still contain Bam because Bam killed us last year in the conference finals.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's hope Bam isn't going to kill us now. Let's hope Time Lord actually healthy? I'm going to be honest.
I believe so.
Last time
it's been a little while since I watched a Celtics game. Just going to be honest.
All I know is that Tatum will go for 60 or he'll go for 20.
Right, exactly. So we'll see, but
Jesus Christ, the Warriors are so good. I just looked this up. Curry dropped 49 points in 3 quarters.
Oh wow.
Of course, he gets the Thunder. It's the same team that lost by like a crap ton to the Pacers. But jeez, I'm worried for you, man. If you end up having to put
I know. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Oh my God.
Steph Curry decides to turn it up against us. Yeah, not going to be fun. So
Tristan Thompson's leading in rebounds. I don't think he's the box score. Yeah, no, Time Lord ain't. Yeah, Time Lord wasn't playing at least yesterday.
Interesting, huh?
So yeah, no, I'm worried. I think, my gosh, I think Bam could just carve us alive. because Bam's done that. And I guess with knowing our luck, Tyler Hero is going to drop 40. You know, it is how it is. That should be exciting. But yeah, I think the thing is, I wanted to. I think we already talked about this. Another, I guess, talking point I wanted to do is just the Bucks, and we kind of talked about that when we were talking about the Nets, like how I think Drew Holiday has just made this team so dangerous, under the radar, just because you know they're in the vicinity for the best record in the East, right? Drew Holiday just made them so good defensively. It's raised their ceiling, and I don't think Budenholzer's that good of a. I mean, we know his record in the postseason is kind of awful, but I think this could be the time. This could be the time that it all clicks together, man.
Hey, I mean, looking at that team, the Bucks team, it's like just really stacked at this point. Like Milwaukee went all in because they wanted to make sure that Giannis
is happy. Yeah,
he's happy that he's convinced that he can win in Milwaukee. That he can sign that supermax and like put all those doubts to bed. Trade deadline they got PJ Tucker. They have Drew Holiday, have Chris Middleton. Their team is really good. Not mentioning, of course, Giannis, 2-time MVP. Guy's been again a beast. So that team, just really really solid. I think they are definitely a threat. We'll have to see in postseason. I think, again, I don't think Budenholzer necessarily coaches bad in postseason. I think he's a little bit stuck in his ways, which you could say that's bad coaching, but a little bit stuck in what he usually does. He doesn't change up too much.
Doesn't adjust that well, yeah.
Right. So that's something that, good coaches, I feel like sometimes they have to change stuff up when, the going's not right. Goings are tough. Like you're down in a series, you got to change something up. I don't think Budenholzer changes enough. Like even if he does change it, it's not enough to really, have the Bucks climb out of the hole basically in the playoffs. But this season it might all change. We'll have to see. So.
Yeah. I think it can. I think the Bucks will definitely win their first round matchup, whether it's against the Heat. I mean, I know we're like, oh, whoa, the Heat did it last. I just think Drew Holiday can lock up a guardless, in a way, guardless Heat. That's not really good play at the moment. It feels like it's Jimmy and Bam kind of carrying that team. And I think there's something to be said about that. Or even if it's against the Celtics, then I'm sorry, they'll beat the Celtics. Still match up well against the Bucks. I mean, we've known this for a while, every time. And so, whatever team, I don't think the Knicks will fall, just because the Knicks are just hot and the Knicks are just insane right now. But I think the Bucks will never win their first round, and then if they end up playing the Nets and Harden isn't there, I mean, we'll see. Do we know when Harden's coming back?
Harden, so he said himself to the media that he's quote unquote very confident he'll be back before the postseason begins. However, that's him speaking to the media. That's not the official team, report. And as Nets, as an organization, as much as I know about how they've handled injuries with KD and I guess Harden to some extent, I wouldn't be surprised if they held him out for the rest of the season, but he could be, rest of the regular season, not the postseason. But,
okay. I was like,
right.
What?
Sorry, my bad. Rest of regular season because they are cautious, but there could be a chance he gets back maybe 1-2 games at the very end.
So I guess with that in mind, right? So if he is able to come back, let's say healthy, right?
Yeah.
I guess the discussion we had earlier, right, about the Nets going on the Nets panic button, that kind of gets moot in that case, right? Not necessarily moot, but Harden is there, right? And we can see, I guess, that historic offense. I mean, of course, the Nets mimic the Clippers. I love how this goes back. This is why I didn't do segments this time. I figured this was turned into a rant type thing, like we always do. But
right.
The Nets kind of turn into the Clippers of last year, where the three don't play that many minutes together, and you're thinking, oh, just because they have a lot of talent, it'll work together. And what do you know? You're made fun of. Memes are made of you blowing a 3-1 lead to like the Nuggets, but I guess to them it would be the Bucks. But so I can see that happening. So that is a concern. But I mean, that makes it less likely in that case. I think then the Nets should be the favorites out of the East if Harden's actually going to come back then.
They should be favorites, but again, in the playoffs, like I think the playoffs don't benefit what Harden does in terms of just like his playing style historically. And I would say to an extent, probably what I think Kyrie does, KD or Kyrie a little bit, just because they don't get as much calls in the postseason. Officials let you play a little bit more. Game slows down a little bit. For Harden, especially historically, like he's always the guy that relied on getting to the free throw line. A little bit less this season, I would say, because like he's kind of like transitioned into more of a floor general point passing guy. But back in the day in Houston, that was his one like knock in the postseason is that he couldn't get to the line as much. So, like just having 7 games between the three of them played this season, that is really tough. Like you don't have that like continuity, that chemistry. And you're playing against like these crazy good like teams, like both defensively and they have like superstars in Milwaukee and Philly. They are the favorites. Brooklyn, they are the favorites. Don't get me wrong, but it's going to be tough for them.
Yeah. So the point we're making about the Bucks, I guess, is that it should probably the Nets should probably win that series, but Budenholzer should have this team in a spot where it won't look like an embarrassment. And I don't think it will.
Yeah, basically.
I guess now this is going back all the way across the Mississippi to the Western Conference. But what's Kawhi's injury timetable?
Kawhi's been playing, so he's not injured anymore.
So is he fully healthy though?
You could say fully healthy, but I think Kawhi said that he was playing through a foot injury and he got like rested basically for a week and a half to kind of like rest that foot injury. He's now playing again, but I think it's something that's going to be kind of on the back of his mind for the rest of the season. So it'd be kind of a la LeBron coming back within, say he's healthy, he's playing, but there's still going to be some kind of like effects in the back end of his body, basically, that kind of stuff. But he'll play.
Well, yeah, but I think the difference is though that the Clippers are better offensively than the Lakers are offensively without Kawhi, right? Without Kawhi, like LeBron needs to be there for the Lakers offense to like function, but right. Kawhi isn't there. Let's hope Pandemic P doesn't show up, but if you're a Clippers fan, but it could.
It could. It very well could.
Show him back. He's been on a tear, and then all of a sudden it's just back to hitting the side of the backboards.
Oh my god.
But yeah, because we're relatively high in the Clippers, the two of us. Yeah. I know you are extremely high. I just trust your judgment. Yeah. Well, I mean, of course, I guess we got to talk about the Wizards getting hot. So, the Wizards are hot. I guess I don't know what more to say other than Westbrook clinched averaging a triple-double. You see all these pundits being like, I don't care, or it's maybe we shouldn't take a stock, or, oh, no, it's the opposite. Like, Russell Westbrook is so underrated and all that. So whatever it is, it's I'll say from my standpoint, I fall into more like, let's appreciate Westbrook. My gosh. I actually care. Sure, they're a 9 seed team, and they're below 500, but I care. My goodness.
Wow. I feel like they can make some noise in like, playing tournament for sure. And then playoffs, I think they can give some of the teams, even the best ones, a little bit of a scare at this point because they are so good. Just like another thing about Westbrook also, he actually is now tied with Oscar Robertson for most triple doubles in in career wise. Sorry, not in the season, career wise. With 181, and still got what
Well,
4 games
well,
left.
okay.
Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
They didn't play today, did they?
They played. They played tonight,
So
and
is that yeah? That's what I thought. So that is that. Did he? Oh, he tied it tonight. Gotcha.
he tied it tonight. Yeah. So yeah, basically he did it all tonight. He blocked the shot winner. They won by 1 point, 133, 132 against the Indiana Pacers at Indiana. Yeah, he literally blocked the last 3-point attempt. So yeah, big triple double as well. 33, 19, 15. Yeah, I think he clinched triple double season. Not only that, I'm pretty sure he clinched I think both his triple doubles are it's like 20 something and 11 and 11, so it's above 10. It's like way above 10 now. So it's just like insane. But yeah, that's how good Westbrook is. At the beginning of the season, I thought the Wizards as a whole, they were. Let's not like sugarcoat this. At the beginning of the season, the Wizards weren't that good. They were
Yeah.
started 0-5. Westbrook was pretty cold, looked like he was washed a little bit, not to be honest. Like stuff wasn't clicking. Bradley Beal was going off for crazy amount of numbers, right? But the Wizards just couldn't buy a win at all. Come now, late season, they've been clicking on all cylinders. Beal's been in and out of the lineup, ironically, but he was here this night, scoring 50 before
50.
leaving with a hamstring, unfortunately. But yeah, this team's been winning. They've been hot. They're definitely going to. I think they're definitely making the playoffs. That's something that I think will happen. But the only problem with them is that they're seated so low, even if they make the playoffs. And the top of the East is so heavy and so talented. It's a little bit difficult to win the series. But they could make it interesting.
Yeah, I guess it's clicking later than we thought it would. I thought they'd be like a 6 seed or a set 5 seed when Westbrook came there. I thought actually this would be a place where Westbrook could work, and I mean they're below 500, so you might say they didn't. But again, if you look at the recent stretch, you could say they did. It is, and you just hope that later on, I don't see it being. Of course, like we said, the top is so it's believable. We like the Bucks. The Nets are the Nets, and I mean the Sixers. I low key, I think the Sixers are kind of going under the radar naturally, but because I mean, we're kind of yeah, Ben Simmons probably a defensive player of the year. Yeah, Joel Embiid's borderline MVP candidate, but and they're top of the East. We just say it, and then we're just oh, but it's the Nets, so.
They've had a good season, so
It's been amazing. So even if they get out of they win. Let's say they win. What would happen? So I think whichever it is, Hawks, Miami, Boston, right? They would have to be. Well, if the Wizards beat the Hawks, man, this whole thing is messed up. Point is, even if they win their playing games and make it into the actual playoffs, right? I don't think they would win a series against the. It would be either
Sixers, Bucks, Nets. It'd be one of the three.
Yeah, it would be one of those three, and they wouldn't. I don't think they would.
Yeah, those guys are just way too good. They're loaded teams. So
I guess you just hope so. You just hope that Gafford stays the way they are as this young piece, and it's working for them.
Yeah.
And this core can kind of work it out next year. But I mean, Westbrook is getting he's getting up there in age, isn't he?
Just a little bit, I would say. He's not too old, but he is getting a little bit up there in age at this point. He's 32. So
okay, it's not too bad.
Not too bad. But, yeah.
But I mean, his game doesn't translate too much, because it's based on athleticism rather than skill. Let's say Curry, right? Because Curry is also, under the radar, getting up there as well. But because he's actually somehow gotten more athletic as he's gotten older. My goodness. And, it's built on a lot of skill, right? It's built on just 3-point shooting and assisting and just running around the corners and having people set screens for him and all that, all that jazz. I guess it's less, his age is less of a factor than Westbrook's would be. say coming into like a later season. So
Agreed.
something
Yeah.
something to look an eye on, and of course the, the these same teams are going to be like the Bucks are going to be there next year. We'll figure out what Nets will be there next year. All these same teams will be good next year. It's always based on injuries and how everything shapes out, coaching and all that
Absolutely.
stuff. And I think that's all I gotta. I know the Pacers are kind of free falling, but in a way they're free falling. But I don't know much to say there because I mean the Pacers are the Pacers. There's not much for me to talk about. I don't know if you want to talk about something.
Not too much to talk about the Pacers. I think I heard one thing about how they let go of Coach Nate McMillan middle of the season. I think he's with the Hawks right now, if I'm right. Yeah, he is, because Hawks fired Lloyd Pierce. But Nate McMillan, right, with the Hawks, it's been a success story, I'd say. They've like really just turned it up and they've done well. Indiana firing Nate McMillan, I think, might be one of the biggest mistakes they made this season. I think he is a great coach because they played really well under him. I think they went through a little bit of a rut patch. That's why they let him go, but it was just like a little bit shocking that they did. And this is where they are today. The Pacers have fallen all the way down to what is it, the 9th seed, something like that, 9th, 10th seed. That's like amazing. Like they were, I think, middle of the season, a 4 or 3 seed, something like that. They were all the way up there, and now they're a 10th seed. So, I think it shows you coaching is not like the biggest thing in NBA, but it's also very important to have like a really efficient system that works. So,
of course, man. Yeah, I mean, there's these. I don't remember the new guy's name, but like there's talk about like how they don't like the current interim coach, and how they just gonna get fired. It looks like so. Yeah, I guess that's fair to say. So I guess I got nothing to say then on the Eastern Conference. Kind of wrapped it up in that case. We'll probably, if we want to talk, we'll probably talk more about, let's say, maybe not that sort of regular season recap, but like a playoff look ahead and maybe who we think are going to win like the awards.
Sure.
Like later on when it gets finalized. We already talked about the MVP just because the MVP is a talking point for so much of the season.
Yeah.
It's just like a side story that goes on with the NBA. So yeah, I think that's a wrap for the NBA on my book. What about you, man?
Yeah, that's the same. It's been, stay tuned for this last week of games. It's going to be real fun, but yeah, we'll keep you updated for sure.
Yeah, my goodness. As a Celtics fan, I'm definitely got it checking in those Heat games. My gosh. But even then, right? If I'm not, I shouldn't be too. I'd be disillusioned about this, right? What the Celtics ceiling isn't that high if I have to be in this situation, right? The Celtics are in this situation. What can they really do in the playoffs? Like, let's just be honest. And we can go on a whole Celtics rant on how they maybe messed this up. Tatum scoring 60 points, right? It was supposed to be, you have Marcus Smart, you have Kemba, you have Jalen. Like, it looks so great on paper. We've talked about this multiple times about why it's not good in execution at times. Like, it's very much ISO ball, and you just rely on Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum to work it out for you. But with Jaylen Brown taking the step up, it just sucks that as a team we took a step back.
Yeah, exactly.
It's Jaylen Brown, like, it just became so much better, and Tatum like rounded out to being a superstar, and the team actually got worse. Like, again, it's all like clustered around like the 4 to 7, but I'm gonna just say we got worse. We're around 500, so that's not where we should be.
Right.
And it sucks. So I guess we said we're done with the NBA, but maybe we weren't. Just that little nugget in there about the Celtics. But yeah, stay tuned. Stay tuned for next week and later on. We definitely will be talking more about it.
Absolutely.